the waiting game, people.
It's the what?
Waiting game.
Ah, yes. We are sitting at a train station in Chicago right now, waiting to get on a train to head downtown to talk to some people about Mothman.
And when's it coming? We do not know.
Eventually. Maybe.
Wisconsin. Y'all drove up here?
Yeah.
I thought y'all just...
Wisconsin. We are currently 20 minutes outside of O'Hare Airport. And as you can tell, we are getting closer and closer to Chicago because we're going slower and slower. We're going to start the CAPS road trip off with one of the biggest investigations that we have done to date. But in order to go forward, we have to take you back to when we first started this case.
Expedition Mothman.
I like that. 3 locations that are hot. Right now we got the Mothman down in Chicago. We're going to go into depth on that in a minute. I got a present for Ethan here, and we're going to do this later. I printed off, I don't know, you can't see that probably, but I printed off a map of O'Hare Airport and then the surrounding area around it. So what we're going to do is we're going to look up all the sightings of Mothman within the last year, and then we're just going to pinpoint every single one on here and see the date and where it is and start working on that. Because there's been a lot in the last month or two. Well, not really, maybe not so much sightings in the last month. There's been at least 3 in the last month or two, but there's also been people coming forward in the last couple months because of the publicity of this, of past events. And as far as I could tell, it started in April of 2017. There was 3 people that reported it all on the same day of April 16th and 17th. Within a 1-day span, 3 different people reported seeing it, and then it's kind of spiked from there.
Okay.
Maybe we need to go back even further, just in case everyone out there hasn't been following along. And for that, the road trip needs to head to where Mothman made a name for himself. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country roads. The Mothman is reported as a black or gray form, 6 to 8 feet tall, large leathery wings that can be wrapped around its body to resemble a trench coat, only to be unfolded to reach upwards of 12 feet wide, or the entire width of a 2-lane road. And let's not forget about the red glowing eyes. Entities resembling this have been reported all over the world and in far back recorded history. But it wasn't until the incidents in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, that Mothman really hit it big. On November 15th, 1966, 2 young couples from Point Pleasant, Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Mallette, told police that they saw a large gray creature whose eyes glowed red when the car's headlights picked it up. They described it as a large flying man with 10-foot wings, following their car while driving in an area outside of town known as the TNT area, the site of a former World War II munitions plant. During the next few weeks, more and more people claimed to have sightings of the Mothman. The sightings spiked the interest of the renowned Fortean researcher and ufologist John Keel, who went on to write the book The Mothman Prophecies, based on his research, that later went on to become a motion picture with the same name. The sightings of the Mothman continue, along with other strange events and visitors to the town of Point Pleasant, until it seemed the culmination on December 15th, 1967, when the Silver Bridge that connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia to Gallipolis, Ohio, collapsed, killing 46 people. It was reported that the Mothman was seen over the bridge just prior to the collapse, and since then, the Mothman has been associated with being a harbinger for doom and feared wherever it is seen. This, however, hasn't stopped the city from embracing the winged being. In fact, in the heart of downtown is a 12-foot tall statue and an entire museum dedicated to the events of 1967. And if this wasn't enough, every year the city puts on a festival that draws an estimated 10 to 12,000 people. Now that we got a good understanding of where Mothman made its name, we need to get a little background on the Chicago sightings. For that, we sought out a man who has been at the forefront since they started.
So my name is Tobias Wayland, and I'm the head writer and editor for the Singular Fortean Society. And what the Singular Fortean Society is an organization devoted to investigation and journalism, specifically focusing on the paranormal. Spring of 2017, I saw that the MUFON case management system had these trio of sightings come through it, and so I was interested. At that time, of course, I was writing news articles for the Singular Fortean Society, and I thought, well, okay, maybe I'll check these out and see if there's anything to them. And so I saw those initial reports, and there was a brief article on the MUFON website. It didn't have a lot of information. They really just included like the initial reports, and then maybe like a line or two comparing it to like Point Pleasant. And so I was like, okay, well, I think this could make a interesting article. I think people will enjoy reading it. And so I just kind of wrote it up, showing the reports that had come in, and just writing a little bit more on Point Pleasant than I think was in the MUFON article. And I didn't think it was going to go anywhere for a couple of reasons. Honestly, like MUFON isn't great about sharing info. They just aren't. It is what it is. And I thought that this would just be, like so many other weird sightings, just like a one-off incident where people reported it, and maybe it wasn't really followed up on, and that would be the end of it. And frankly, if the reports had come into me and I wasn't able to follow up on them, I wouldn't have even published them.
MUFON all but threw out the initial reports after finding out that they had all come from the same IP address, which is actually more common than you think, since several IP addresses can pass through the same server depending on the area. And with so many people in Chicago area, it's more than possible that all three came through the same server giving them the same IP address. If there had only been 3 sightings, you wouldn't be here watching this episode. In fact, at the time of making this, there have been over 150 reports in the Chicagoland, Lake Michigan area alone. But not every one of these sightings depicts a winged humanoid creature.
Oh yeah, it definitely hasn't been cited that many times. Probably 40 to 45% of these sightings, by my account, with the profile that I put together, are probably misidentified birds. So yeah, no, not every one of those sightings is of something truly, paranormal.
How many people have you actually talked to that you would believe is a Mothman creature?
Oh, okay. So like something similar to
this thing,
Sure.
not a pterosaur or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So a sort of true winged humanoid,
Yeah.
as it were. Boy, I'd have to look at our timeline. Probably at least a dozen, just off the top of my head.
Allison Jornlin has been following the Mothman story from the beginning and has personally investigated the site of so many reports.
I was so excited about the possibility that maybe this icon of the paranormal, Mothman, was coming to Chicago. I was so excited. Such a major paranormal event happening, then I should be involved in it. And I should be investigating it because that's what's important to me. So I should put in the work. I should put in the money. My idea was simple. I was excited that, hey, Mothman's in Chicago. So I was like, why don't I go to all the locations? And then I'll film all the locations for YouTube. And then I'll talk about the reports as I'm at the location. And people can make their own determination from what they see on site. So I've been to all the 2011 and 2017 locations. Now I know that the sighting continued on since then, but what I found in my travels led me to believe that, maybe that's not the best use of my time and money to go to the subsequent locations, because for me, I've seen a lot of inconsistencies in the reports. I want people to think critically about these reports, because if we don't, then we run the danger of just lumping hoaxed reports or just trolling internet trolling with people who really saw something.
People can always hide behind the internet and email, but meeting someone face to face adds a little credibility. Derek and I headed down to Chicago to meet with a local who has been keeping tabs on the Mothman and has personally talked to some witnesses. How's it going, Barnaby?
Pretty good. Jack, nice to meet you.
My name's Derek.
Nice to meet you. I've been researching and investigating the paranormals for several years. I started out when I was pretty young. I was looking into mysterious disappearances and missing persons cases, and it was kind of this unhealthy obsession with it for being so young. But that kind of, led me down to a path of cults and UFO reports, psychic phenomena, ghost phenomena, and a whole slew of different aspects of the paranormal. The Chicago Mothman Sightings, April of 2017. So there was a report that occurred in the Pilsen neighborhood, and this happened in April 2017, and I had lived in the Pilsen neighborhood at that time, so I was really interested in that sighting. So what it was a truck driver who had his truck at the Chicago International Produce Market, which is like an enclosed warehouse. There's several warehouses together. He said it was about, I forgot the exact time, but it was late into the night, and he got out of his truck, and he said that there was 4 or 5 other truck drivers, and they were pointing up toward a nearby building. And when he looked up at the building, he said that it was this giant, creature. It was like this black mass, and they were really confused, and they started throwing rocks at us, and then eventually it flew away. That's how I got into the Chicago Lake Michigan Mothman, or Lake Michigan Phantom, whatever you want to call it. There's all sorts of names for this being. One of the reasons why there's all sorts of names is because a lot of the reports don't fit the exact description of the original Mothman from Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Some of the descriptions are everything from insect-like to bird-like to pterodactyl-like to even gargoyle-like. So that's why there's all sorts of names, whether you call it the Phantom or the Mothman, or whatever it is people are calling it. As of right now, as of 2021, there is about 124 alleged sightings, and we have no names of these witnesses. We have no faces to them. So it gets a little bit, one tends to be a little bit suspicious. Allegedly, none of these witnesses want to be out in the open, which, once in a while you come across that in the paranormal. However, once in a while you come across that. When you have 124 witnesses, from my personal investigating and research, most people are willing to, have their name known, be on camera, usually it's not, nothing too personal, a first name, fine, a little thing on the camera just so people could see, what's going on. They could put a face to this profound, phenomena. But we don't have any of that, unfortunately. And even by the end of 2017, we were up to 59 alleged sightings, and we didn't have anyone.
Most people, if they send us a report, like the first thing that I'll do is reach out and be like, okay, great, well, can I talk to you about this? And some people will never respond. Some people will respond a little bit and then ghost you. And then some people are more than willing to talk about it. Now, if they don't respond at all, then I have no way of knowing what's going on. I don't know if it's a deliberate hoax, or if they had just written because they wanted to get something off their chest. Because frankly, a lot of people don't necessarily want a lot of involvement. They really don't. They want to tell their story once. They want to know that somebody heard it, and if you've got answers for them, which we largely do not, then they want those. But that's it. Then they are done. Some people are a little more willing to help out, but then life gets in the way, and so you talk to them a little bit, maybe you exchange a couple of emails, and then whatever, they got to go to work and their kid's sick and they really don't have time to deal with this, and then maybe by the time they do, they're like, well, it's been a really long time, so I'm just going to let it go. And then you've got the people who, the stars align and you're actually able to get them on the phone or face to face or something, and really get their experience firsthand. And among those people, I have not had a single case where the evidence that I was able to follow up on contradicted their statement. So that is really to say no evidence at all of any hoax among anyone with whom I have directly interacted with.
I myself did find one of the witnesses from one of the reports from these sources, and it was just using context clues in order to find out who this individual was. So using the report, I used context clues. I went to the location. It was actually the Sears Tower sighting. What the report was that the individual stated that they were on a smoke break, and they were outside, and they saw what they thought was somebody committing suicide jumping off the Sears Tower. but upon closer look, they said that this thing had wings, and it looked like a giant insect, but then it morphed and looked like a giant bird, and then kind of just flew around and then took off into the distance and disappeared. So I went to the location where I thought it was at. I asked around. Long story short, I found the individual. So I did find that, unfortunately, it wasn't an actual credible witness. I still know the individual. We've had conversations, and they themselves have stated to me, well, it wasn't exactly Mothman or something like that. It might have been something else, etc., etc. So and then, like I said, I did find out it was not very credible. One of the credible witnesses I did speak to, his name was John. He was security at a bar called the Owl in the Logan Square neighborhood. Now, once again, using context clues from the reports, I was able to find out, where I should go to find the individual, to find a witness. And then I sought him out. I said, this is who I am, this is what I do. Do you have 5 minutes we could talk? And he was working. And he said, sure, yeah, we could, I could go out for, outside for a little bit and we could discuss it. I go, great. What John says that he saw was a pterodactyl-like creature. He says that he was outside of his job and he happened to look up. This was about 10 to 10:30 p.m. on a Friday. This was in, I believe, in June or July. It was during the summer. And he said he looked up and he said he thought it was a giant bird. But he was looking closer and it had a head like a pterodactyl. And he said the whole body actually looked like a pterodactyl, a pterosaur. And he believes that that's what he witnessed. That he believes that he witnessed a prehistoric pterodactyl creature.
In terms of contact with the police, even in Chicago, I mean, well, for instance, there's the Auburn Gresham report where supposedly the witness was a police officer who was anonymous, so I never talked to this person or anything, who said that he had submitted a police report. And of course, hearing that, had tried to contact them and submit my own FOIA request. I know other people did, and I couldn't even get them to respond to my FOIA. And so other people said that they had theirs denied. Like I said, I didn't even get a response, which I'm not even sure. I don't even think that's legal. I think that they're legally obligated to at least respond and say they don't have it, but they wouldn't even give me that. So they definitely, in my experience, weren't very cooperative. Whether or not somebody wants to read into that there was some sort of active cover-up that's up to them. That's a bridge too far for me because I haven't seen the evidence.
It's 9:48 p.m. and we're heading back downtown via train to check out Mothman in downtown Chicago. If the police won't respond to Freedom of Information Act requests on the Mothman, maybe they will be less formal with people they just meet on the street. With the police just standing on every corner of downtown Chicago, we thought we would give it a try and see what we could dig up. We got on this train at a station back there, and we've been riding it for about 40 minutes. It's been a long time. And now somehow we ended up downtown Chicago. So now our goal is to find people to talk to and see if they've had any sightings of Mothman. Have you guys ever seen or got a report or anything of the Mothman down here?
No.
No? Have you heard that he's down here?
The Mothman? Never heard of
Since 2017, it's been sighted down in the Chicago area from pretty much all over, by O'Hare Airport and stuff, supposedly. About over 125 sightings.
I don't know about that.
So what does he have? Moths? He's just made out of moths?
He's a 7 to 8 foot tall winged humanoid.
No,
I've never heard of that.
I watch those paranormal shows too, so I know I never seen that.
Is that why
we got
you're here?
hotels.
Well,
look
to find
for
out,
him?
we use his help. Well,
Yeah.
we've gotten
Wasn't
some.
that, first of all, wasn't the whole story with the Mothman made up by the teenage girls?
That was Point Pleasant.
That was the
Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Oh, Slender Man, yeah.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
Wrong guy.
Yeah. Whoops. Wrong man.
Wrong man,
Yeah.
But no, I know we have like the hotels, like different hotels down here. I mean, a lot of
Like
sightings,
ghosts?
the cemeteries.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you can go on but yeah, no, I'd never heard of the Mothman.
I've never heard of the Mothman either. And I actually live by O'Hare, and I've never heard of him either.
So far, we have talked to 3 police officers, none of which have ever heard of the Mothman, let alone it even being in Chicago. They were very excited to know that we were from Wisconsin and wanted to know if we ever seen a werewolf. But that's a totally different story. So we're going to keep a lookout and we're going to get back to it. We do like paranormal research and stuff. We're down in Wisconsin. There's been a lot of reports of like a Mothman. Familiar with it?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen anything, heard anything like that?
No.
No? But you know what I'm talking
Yeah, I
about.
do. Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
So we're trying to actually find like anything that legitimizes it beyond that. You know, as far as like any reports, anything you guys have seen or
No,
Mothman?
nothing. Yeah. Sorry.
Nothing?
Nothing. I wish I knew.
Oh, at least you've heard of it.
Yeah, I have heard of it, but yeah, me, nothing here. So
Do you think it's legit? Like,
I don't know.
yeah? I like your reaction. You don't? No?
I'm gonna have to Google it later.
You don't know anything about it at all?
I hope you find what you're looking for.
Thanks. So do we.
Yeah.
Anyway, have a good night, guys.
All right,
Thanks.
you too.
After a long night of talking to people and walking around downtown Chicago, we were tired and ready for the long train ride back to the hotel. With so much speculation surrounding the actual witnesses of the Chicago Mothman, we wanted to talk to some witnesses ourselves, if we could find any. So we put out advertisements and sent emails and contacted everyone we knew to find one. It turns out that me and Ethan actually knew one personally. So you saw it in the tree?
No, I saw him like a foot from my nose, like he was sitting on my garage right there. Or he was on the peak of this roof because he went right past my nose. And it was like past my nose, and I went and watched him through the backyards over here and land somewhere on that brown house's garage. See? Hairs started to stand up when I talk about that. But that night too, when I ran in the house and I told my wife, come outside, you gotta see this. It's like, it's a man, size of a bird man size. She's like, it's the Mothman. I was like, don't say that stuff. Says, that's not funny. And she turned around and was like, you saw the Mothman, I bet. And I was like, man, don't say that. And I went into my frenzy stage where it was like, you say stuff like that, thousands of people will die, tens of thousands of people will die. And the next night, 666 came in the lottery. Was it Christmas Eve? Was it New Year's? She knows the exact date. It was Christmas, right? And 666 came in the lottery, and a tsunami hit and killed tens of thousands of people.
It is the sheer scale of this disaster that is so confronting. Not a train wreck, a car pile-up or a capsized ferry, but a force so overwhelming that happy tourists enjoying the first dip of the day vanished beneath the waves, thousands of them. Thai villages like Nam Kem obliterated, 2,000 lives lost here alone.
Tens of thousands of people. That's what I said. Prediction or outside influence. And my sister-in-law saw him down the street here. She'd see it swooping in between the lights, following in front of her in her car, and she never said nothing.
And that was around the same
She
time
wouldn't
too?
come over at night anymore. Yeah. stopped coming over at nighttime.
So you
Weird
got
place.
you got a really close look at this thing. So
Yeah.
what did it look like to you? Like was it like covered in fur? Was it like scaly? The body wise.
Almost seemed like a color of a finch, a golden finch. So if there was a giant golden finch when it went past your face with no neck, picture that.
So it was like a golden
color. They had that golden color, but smooth feathers. They look slick, like a duck.
Yep, we heard that too. Golden feathers and smooth like a duck. That's not your typical description of what the Mothman looks like. Now, I don't claim to know what Chris saw that night, but whatever it was big. We started to wonder if anyone has actually seen the typical glowing red eyes, black-winged harbinger of doom in the Chicagoland area. Until we met Bob.
Hi, my name's Bob Anderson, and I host the Paranormal podcast radio show called Bob After Dark, where I talk about legends, lore, and supernatural. I'm also a paranormal investigator and cryptozoologist. I have seen what I believe is the Mothman, yes. A lot of speculation on what exactly happened here in Chicago between the years 2015 and 2019. What is it here? Is it the actual Mothman? I'm not 100%, but I like to believe that what I saw was the Mothman, yes. So this would have been about 2016, 2017. And this is a quick trigger warning, folks. A lot of mental health stuff. If you're suffering from anything, get help. So I was closing up at work one night, and this was prior to me being where I'm at right now with my life and in my paranormal world. I got off of work, and you get to a certain point in life sometimes when you just reach that point, and I'll save you the details, but I was done. I got off of work and I was traveling down I-80 going towards Indiana, where I live. And on 80, right by the state border, there is a rock quarry that you drive over right outside Thornton Township in Illinois, right before Calumet City. Blues Brothers fame, by the way. I was driving when all of a sudden my car radio turned to static, and bits and pieces of things were coming in because the music leading up to that point was very strange too, because you get to a certain point in life when things just really don't make sense. And in this case, I had a lot of the music I heard was things about being alive, staying alive, moving on, continuing on, Bee Gees, Cher, etc., things like that. And my radio completely went static at that point. I got really upset because my day is just getting worse, and I, A, don't want to hear this kind of music, and B, I don't want to have to deal with my radio being out of my car when I'm trying to go home and be done. I look out to my passenger side. And by the way, this is probably about, for time's sake, I would say 8:30 at night. And that part of 80, there's traffic, but it's not super heavy at that time of day, especially during the time frame that everything kind of happened to me. And I look out to my right, and there was this thing kind of was hovering over the rock quarry. And I look out, and it was pretty big. Now, it's not uncommon for the area I was in to have things like bats and other weird animals that don't belong in the region, because we lived right next to like the major oil refineries and steel refineries, or especially in that area. So it wasn't uncommon for these types of animals to get off on trains. So it wasn't uncommon to look up and see something that didn't belong. So I was like, that's a really big bat. But it wasn't a bat, because I've never seen a bat just kind of stay in place and almost not lock eyes, I guess, but just kind of hone in on the area I was in, and it was just kind of hovering. Me and 3 other motorists pull over to the side because it was just, I don't want to say compelled, but it was, you see something like that, it's kind of strange. And I was in the right-hand lane, so it wasn't like I was disturbing traffic. And me and the other motorists kind of pulled off, and I went to go take a picture after looking at it for what looked like forever, but I only had a couple of moments with it. by the time I pulled my phone out, it was gone. I couldn't tell you if it flew away. I couldn't tell you if it disappeared, but it was like how it went away, but it just gone. And the other motorist turned to me, because we didn't talk up to that point. It was just kind of like boom, boom, boom. It's like, well, what's that? And then one motorist looked at me and said, well, that was the thing, wasn't it? I was like, yeah, that's kind of strange. And they're like, well, I hope you have a really good day. Man, I lost it. I 100%, like, I don't really have an answer for how I felt, because, after you get to a certain point, you start feeling a certain way. Hearing kindness was just, it was a lot to me.
I want to back up and talk a little bit more about what you actually saw. You said it was hovering.
It was kind of hovering. I wish I could tell you I saw wings flapping. I wish I could tell you that I saw something physical, but I can't remember. I can tell you what it looked like, but I can't tell you if I saw it flying, hovering, soaring, whatever. 6 foot, between 5 and 6 feet, let's say. If I, it's in the distance as at dusk, so it's, you're not going to get the best kind of quality. But the one thing I remember, other than the other physical attribute I'm going to tell you, is almost like it was toned. Like, it wasn't like a robust, thing, or it wasn't like the anatomy of another, like a normal animal. It was almost built like a person, almost, or like it had that, like, human-like qualities about it.
So you saw, like, 2 arms, 2 legs, though?
Yeah. It wasn't like body and wings, right, or claws. It was like almost like arms by the wingspan, right?
But then you didn't see wings beyond the arms.
I saw the wings, but I couldn't tell you if they were flapping. And I remember seeing them when I pulled over, but past that point, it was real quick, real fast.
Extended in?
Extended. So my assumption is it was doing some sort of hover. Maybe it was flapping, but I don't remember.
How big would you say the wingspan was then?
6 feet, at least. At least, if not bigger. That was the one thing I remember about it. Like, there were 3 things I remember. I know I keep repeating that, but if there were a few things I remember, really big wingspan. It almost had, like, it wasn't like a human, but it had human-like qualities. Like, if it was on ground, I'd tell you it was bipedal, in a heartbeat. It was, if that thing was in front of me, it would have probably walked. And it can stabilize on its own. And it had glowing eyes.
Okay.
Red, and then the tone of body, it was darker. So I guess it, from what I could pick up on it, very almost like a black gray, silverish complexion. Maybe a little bit of brown thrown in there as well.
Finally, we had our moth. Bob's account matched a lot more in line with the classic Mothman image that we have come to know. And the more that we talked with Bob, we knew he wasn't the type of person to make this up. He saw what he saw. And he wasn't the only one. We found another person who had an encounter with a Mothman creature. Just not in Chicago.
So I was driving from Grand Rapids to Park Rapids, and I was coming through Cohasset, taking Highway 6, I believe it was 6. In between Reamer and Cohasset, I was driving down and I saw this large creature-like thing that had a wingspan as wide as the road, and it came down over the trees, hovered right on the highway, just barely in my headlights, and it was hovering with me, and it was going the same speed I was driving, and I was doing 60 miles an hour. And then it sat there for about a minute, and then it took off. Just went right above the trees, and it just disappeared. Never seen anything like it. I've lived up here my whole life. I've seen eagles, I've seen hawks. I know what they look like, I know how big they get. But this was 10 times the size of an eagle. Like, it was massive. And then it did have legs. I couldn't see if it had talons or anything like that. It was so large, and it was just pitch black. Like, it was all black, no color to it. And then it just took off. Like I said, it just disappeared in the woods and was gone.
You said it hovered as it flew in front of you.
Yep.
Like, you didn't see it flap or anything.
Nope. It never looked like it flapped its wings. It just flew over, and it was just hovering with my headlights, driving the same speed as I was going, and just sat there. And then it just flew off.
For the sake of argument, let's assume that the Mothman is real and exists.
Sure.
And what do you think, based on like the reports and stuff that you deem credible and Mothman-y, what do you think it is? Like spiritual, interdimensional, unidentified creature, whatever?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I get that question a lot, and it's almost easier for me to start with what I think it's not than what I think it is. And I mean, I don't think it is any sort of undiscovered biological species. I think if you look at the reports and what people are describing, obviously outside of the misidentified animals, which are certainly mundane biological species, but in the really weird reports, like the potentially paranormal stuff, I don't think that it's any sort of a biological creature, at least not as we understand it. And the reasons for that are, largely based on our own current understanding of biology and sort of the impossibility of this thing existing in those kinds of terms. So if you think about like the size described, for instance, something that's like 7 or 8 feet tall with, anything approaching a normal human body shape is going to need wings a lot wider than 12 feet to get off the ground. It just doesn't make sense. This thing would need like a 25, 30-foot wingspan to be flying around, and nobody is describing that.
When you have stuff like Bigfoot, you have a fossil record almost, or something in the biological realm that you can look back and say, well, it's kind of humanoid, it's kind of primate and stuff. But this winged humanoid shape, unless you look at like angelic stuff in that, there's no niche for that. And that's kind of like what you said. I totally kind of rule it out as an actual like cryptid or animal, which puts it into spirit, interdimensional, extraterrestrial as well.
Right. Oh, definitely. And that's a great point about the fossil record, because you can look at large primate species, very closely related to humans as they have existed throughout history. And you're right. Yeah, we don't have any winged humanoids in there, at least not that I've seen.
No matter what Mothman is, people do seem to be seeing it. And that means it's out there somewhere. If the CAPS team is going to find it, we need a place to look. And the woods between O'Hare Airport and downtown Chicago seemed like a great place to start. If there's a large creature living in Chicago, this would be the perfect place to hide.
I feel like people don't talk about the Cook County Forest Preserve. There was a lot of high strangeness that goes on there. Winter 2018 into 19, somewhere in that time frame. I can't remember the exact year, was the Mantis Man sighting, and I feel like that was 2019. Let's say that. That could be wrong. Again, I don't have my notes in front of me, but let's say 2019 was the Mantis Man, where somebody saw a half-man, half-mantis creature lurking around in the woods after doing a ritual. There has been reports of vampire covens hanging out there and witch covens that do a lot of work. I've known people that have investigated and interviewed the other kin in the area that hang out in those areas. So, the Cook County Forest Preserve is, in my opinion, one giant ley line.
So basically what we've got are all these reports from last year, 2020, and 2019 of all these sightings right around the main cargo area of the airport, and then just in the vicinity of the airport itself, up to and including these woods right around the river.
Yeah, for 2020 you have all this area. The most recent sightings were around Schiller Park and the airport, and right next to that is this Schiller Woods, and what else is there? Schiller Woods, and that turns into, can you read that? It gets smaller.
Catherine Cavalier Woods, or yep. Chevalier.
And then this is up here, some wildlife area. Today we are on our way through Schiller Woods. We're going to do this, and we're going to do the Cook County wildlife area. And we've been given a couple tips that there might be high activity of strangeness in this area. So we're gonna make our way through these woods and see what we can't scare up.
Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
All right, let's go. 11:23 p.m. Chicago. In part 2 of the Chicago Mothman, the CAPS team hits the streets and the woods in search of the truth. And we definitely keep our eyes trained on the skies.